we got together. Don and I used to work together at a graphic design firm years ago, and we worked together again later at another shop. And Benoit is a client of mine, and then we became friends. We found out we both did photography, and so over the years we've chatted about our work, and we'd go down shooting together various times. And so what we decided in the end was it would make me kind of neat to see what would happen if we displayed together. There's enough commonalities in our work and enough differences too that I think we're curious to see if it would make an interesting show, because you get some neat tensions and some neat correlations, and I think it turned out pretty well actually. There's some similarities in our subject matter, and there's some similarities in how we shoot things, but there's also significant differences in how we choose to process and treat the images. And so it was kind of an experiment that came off in the end. And the idea for the show really was about the idea of alternate exposures. We wanted to do something a little bit different. We're all playing with different ways of trying to capture motion and time. And so whether it's long exposure or Benoit's work with these parts that are in motion and other parts that are still, and it just seemed like a great idea. And so we were originally going to call it alt exposure or something like that, but it didn't ring true. So the idea of stealing time came up, and we went with that.
Can you tell me about fundraising that you're doing about?
This is Benoit's idea for this, and I think it's a great idea. So you want to explain that one?
Yeah, Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders, is my favorite charity in the world. I think it's one of those charities that doesn't get enough attention. It kind of flies under the radar. So because of the whole Ebola crisis that's going on right now, I thought maybe we could, make a tiny little difference here and auction some pieces that we have to raise a bit of money, so we can donate some money to them. Yeah, so far so good. We have all the images of bids on them, so hopefully we can raise as much money as we can. Yeah.
So all the procedures will go 100% to the charity? Or?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Everything that we raise above the opening bid, everything will go towards the charity for sure.
And I'm a photographer and a graphic designer, and as Matt mentioned, we've known each other for quite a while, working together. And my work, I work in a number of different genres, but for the show, what made sense are more landscape work. Some of it is long exposure, like this image, which is a very appealing way for me to work. I particularly like the results, and it fits well with the idea of the show, which is stealing time, because I'm changing the image through the amount of time that I'm exposing the image. And it's a nice change from my normal commercial photography, which is deadline driven and client driven. Across the way, I have departed from long exposure work with some of this landscape work. I made a trip this past year to southeastern Washington to an area called the Palouse, and just extraordinarily beautiful, particularly at the height of June, when the crops are at their best and the colors are incredible and the landscape is just really picturesque. The only problem is having to get up at 4:30 in the morning in order to get the best possible light. But I would love to go back and explore some more and make more images there. And this falls less into the idea of stealing time, although the framing of any one of these photos tends to encapsulate this one spot in a way that I'm never going to see it again. So really enjoyed making these images, and I like the process of how they've been framed, which tends to also enhance the light that is emitted from them.
Okay, well, the pieces you're seeing here are all using a long exposure technique, and I just enjoy the I enjoyed partly just taking it. You're there for long periods of time, and you're kind of imagining what this might end up looking like when you're done with it. And you've no idea because you're standing there for 9 minutes with the shutter open, and you're just hoping that the movement of the clouds or the movement of the water is going to do something really interesting. And I've always liked that sort of surprise nature of it. At the end of it, you're not really sure what you're going to get until all said and done. But I also really like how it completely smooths out motion, and people can be walking by and they're not even in it after a while. So it's sort of like this world that doesn't actually exist. It's a way of kind of taking a place out of time, just briefly, and capturing something that can't normally be seen. Especially the way water or clouds move and then are kind of frozen in this, either clouds shredding across space or water turned into something that's just this milky translucence. And I really enjoy that fact that you're again creating something that cannot exist any other way. You've compressed 9 minutes of time into this single still image, and our eyes can't see it that way, but this allows us to, and that's really quite interesting to play with. These shots here were taken in Venice last year, and it was kind of a neat experience because I was going out at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning when there was no one around and the entire city was empty. And so I got a chance to sort of imagine, all right, how can I capture this? How can I find a way to translate or communicate what this is like to see Venice with no one there? Instead of the hordes of tourists, there's nothing. An occasional cat maybe, but nothing. And it's so peaceful and calm, and it's like a fairy tale in a way. So the long exposure allowed me to do that, to capture at least the feeling of what that was like. And so then, I don't know, do you want to look at the black and white ones over here? And so these ones were taken more locally, but the same kind of idea, a sense of capturing a place just out of time. I really enjoy that. I really enjoy sort of imagining what it would be like without people, without any distractions. There's sort of a Zen-like quality to it, and so it is a technique I like. It's not the only thing I do, but for this show, the idea of that stealing time idea, it really seemed appropriate somehow to, the idea that you did just steal several moments and take it away. So yeah, that's and some of them work better as black and white. Some of them work better as color. The black and white, it's really, there's that Zen-like quality to it. Whereas with the color, what I find is when you're doing these long exposures, it can be really quite intense, the color you get out of it, in a way that you can't normally capture too, because you've got the shutter open for a while, and the filters you use on the lens to allow you to take these long exposures lend some real warmth and a deep glow to the colors, which you just can't get otherwise. So it's sort of a happy accidental effect. So yeah, it just sort of depends which treatment is better, the black and white or the color for the image. Something like that, better with black and white because it's sort of rugged and lonely, and you don't want color in that. And other ones, like the ones in Venice, you want to capture that intensity. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Benoit Jansen-Reynaud. I'm from France, immigrated to Canada in the 80s, and I now live in Victoria. My work is it's very different. It's a technique that I've sort of created about 1.5 years ago that I've been trying to develop. I use a tilt shift lens with my camera, so a lot of the effects that you see are done in camera, and a lot of it is done in post. So by using a tilt shift lens, I can isolate certain things that I want to keep in focus, and then I try and blur the rest in camera, and then there's a lot of post processing that happens afterward. Basically, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to focus on a certain subject that stuck out, that I basically, that drew me to, like this suite in a Vancouver hotel. I wanted to sort of focus and highlight just that piece of the building. So by using this technique, I'm able to do that, just isolate a section of the building and have everything else in blur. I also use that technique with my bokashi series of trees. So I'm able to focus just on one tree and then do a blur motion on the background just to isolate certain parts of the forest. Maybe sometimes it's one tree, sometimes it's a multiple of trees, and it's a technique that I started using with my tree series. Because I wanted to photograph these trees that I'd seen from the highway, and the background it was a clear cut, so it wasn't very nice. So I wanted to really bring out the trees that were in the front, and I needed a way to blur out the background, and that's how I started working on this new technique that I've sort of perfected in the last year and a half.
So were you exposed to that technique before, and did you take some classes or courses, or you?
No, to be honest, it was something that happened sort of by accident. I opened the photos in Photoshop, and I started to play around, and it just sort of started that way. And some of my images, especially my Bokashi series, the tree ones, there's some of them. There's 20 to 25 hours of post work. So it's very tedious, very hard technique. The architectural photos come from a background. I wanted to be an architect as a child, and that whole idea is still with me, right? So that's why I love to shoot a lot of architectural pieces.